John, if you're ready, we'll hand it over to you first, and Lacey will do a little introduction to you as you get your screen set.
Yep, just need there we go. So as I do set up the screen, I realized when giving this talk this morning, I had cut it to the bone in order to meet a different time requirement. But there are two things you need to know that I think this room might already know, is that acoustic telemetry is the act of tagging an animal with a coded pinger tag and deploying listening stations to find that code all around the world, and that most of that technology is intercompatible. And at any given time, there are hundreds of thousands of animals running around with these little pinger tags inside of them, pinging away, trying to tell people where they are. With those two facts in mind, I think we can dive into what the Ocean Tracking Network is all about and where we're headed into 2025 and beyond. So first, what is our mandate? What is our mission from our funders? So we're based in Canada. We're a global infrastructure network funded by the Canadian Foundation for Innovation. So this is kind of unusual for Canada in that most of these CFI-funded programs are Canada-focused, but we were, from our inception, focused on uniting global telemetry practitioners into a network of networks. And so funded currently as a major science initiative. This means that we are an infrastructure-only program that is meant to provide scientific infrastructure to all of our research partners. We provide gear and field support, but the data part of OTN, which is my contribution, is the contribution of digital infrastructure. So this is how we've been operating since 2015, but we were inaugurated in 2008 to support a Canadian and international research program deploying this monitoring equipment in key locations around the world. And then we've been training successive academic generations of movement ecologists and biogeographers. More recently, we've increased our focus on physical, chemical oceanography and limnography with ROVs, autonomous gliders, but the goal is always to establish these partnerships across a global community of stakeholders and to help document the movement of aquatic animals in a changing ocean. So the knowledge that is collected by OTN-affiliated researchers has been useful to policymakers, industry, indigenous and coastal communities, and to the general public. Where should I click? There we go. So the good news is we're fairly well funded. We're fairly securely funded. We were awarded full funding for a renewal application in 2023, and we will continue to operate through 2029 as a major science initiative. This will enable us to continue doing what we do, supporting a growing global network. And we're also going to specifically expand our database and our partners' databases' abilities to absorb other forms of telemetry data, including pit tagging and satellite telemetry data. With the renewal also has come a new strategic plan and a rededication to our core principles, which are track, connect, and transform. This helps us track and catalog animal movement across broader geographic spaces, a wider range of taxa, connect animal tracking practitioners to one another, and mobilize the data and the knowledge that they're producing into the spaces and formats that help guide policy, and help their work transform the way we conserve and sustain aquatic species. A newish bit of news is that we're one of the few major science initiatives up here in Canada that have been invited by our funder to change our designation to major research facility, which is a large step up in terms of funding stability. It means we no longer have to prove ourselves on short timescales to these funders. It is analogous to something like a US IUS for this specific type of data. It has some other advantages as well, but the big thing that I want you to take home is that it represents our funders' confidence in the work that we're doing and our ability to create long-term plans and lasting infrastructure to build around. It is useful, I think, to drill in a bit. The strategic plan is a bit dry. If you're into it, there was a QR code and I can share a link, but there's a couple of key points that I'd like to highlight. It's important for us through the track heading to raise the profile of tracking data generally for answering new stock management questions and operating and cataloging our progress in doing that with our status as a project of the UN Decade of Ocean Science. This group, a major success that I want to highlight is that we have an equipment loan program that is global in scope. You can call us from any part of the world and apply into the equipment loan program. It is a direct example of how we activate our partners and empower them to add new monitoring capacity to the world. We have many more listening stations here at home in Halifax than we could possibly service ourselves. And this pool of receivers is set up to support partners in their own research activities. So there's a short application form on the OTN website. That QR code will take you there. Researchers can submit a science plan and we will distribute equipment to the successful applicants. Even if you're not studying animals directly, We will partner with platforms of opportunity who are servicing buoys and moorings for other reasons. We'll add acoustic telemetry detection capability to those moorings. This is not a unique thing. I think you'll probably hear similar stories from my partner here, but this helps us keep as many of these pieces of equipment as possible in the water, helps us see more animals in more places. So if you'd like to learn more, please do follow the QR code. Connect, the second pillar, is where I become important. Data mobilization becomes important. So making sure we can stay connected with our partner networks and understand the data needs of this global community on an ongoing basis, helping to steward the data standards that enable us to collaborate. Connect is also about training the next generation of telemetry practitioners by administering workshops, creating learning opportunities, and expanding the capability of our partner networks to ingest and publish data that's collected by new technologies that are coming down the pipeline. Notably, we're going to be building this satellite data processing capability, mobilizing animal-borne oceanographic instrument data into forecasting models as part of the IMOS program. We are following in the footsteps of the other speaker here today and his network, who are pioneers in this. So hopefully we'll see more of that. But another thing that I want to highlight is we want to ensure our stewardship is productive, inclusive, and collaborative. So we align with the FAIR principles, but also the CARE and OCAP principles that are recommended by UNESCO, and ensure that the knowledge that we collect is co-produced in ways that empower the local and indigenous knowledge holders to retain ownership and stewardship over their data. The pipelines we build will respect the network data policy and also aim to do the most good with the data that's being mobilized. A specific example for Connect, how we meet the training and the outreach goal, is OTN Study Hall. The way Study Hall works, every week, myself and some other members of the OTN host a freewheeling open forum virtual gathering. We aim to build a place where students and early career researchers can meet and get support from one another, and where OTNers could just connect with these people from around the globe to discuss problems with data analysis, share tools and methods, and explore solutions to common problems and errors that people get. It's very informal. There's no judgment. It's just people that gather to problem solve. We've hosted these for several years now, and they've proven to be instrumental in connecting hundreds of researchers from labs in all parts of the world. From Svalbard to New Zealand, I think, is now the current geographic scope of those. The final pillar is transform, and it's about bringing our hard-earned data to bear on policy. So in a targeted way, ensuring they're aligned with national and global conservation initiatives and measures, and by ensuring that open data is available and understandable to the public. It's also about ensuring that those new and novel data collection methods get integrated into this big shared system so that we can all benefit. So a lot of OTN's strategic plan goals are about new capacity, physical infrastructure a lot of time, but also digital infrastructure. The way that we fit in as a data center, the way that we help fulfill that infrastructure mission is by being this reliable, reproducible example of digital infrastructure. There are a couple of needs and concerns that researchers have that us data managers are very well positioned to satisfy. So when researchers are sharing data amongst themselves, combining their data holdings into one larger data set, the key is making sure everyone is recording their metadata and data and quality controlling it to a uniform standard. So we maintain and extend a standard at OTN that meets as many of the needs of our partners and affiliate data networks as possible, while still being manageable for conducting field work. At OTN, we also support, co-implement, and share common telemetry data analysis workflows. We partner with people who are authoring the analysis packages and help backstop these institutional or volunteer efforts where they're serving a large community, where they're filling in an important part of the data pipeline. We make sure our data is fit for their purposes, so you can use their tools against our data, and we ensure that their software can act on any of the data sets that our partners are collecting. Geographically, what does this look like? There was a paper by Chuck Bangley, came out in 2020, celebrating the intercompatibility of data across the ACT network, which is in green, the FACT network in red and purple, and OTN up on the North Atlantic coast. So if you squint, you can see me just where the blue is at its thickest. So since that paper's been published, there are new networks. Miramar has extended the reach of this system southward through the Mexican Gulf Coast and Southern Caribbean, as well as the Central Pacific. New compatibility with networks like ITAG and RAFT will extend this coverage further through the Gulf of Mexico and into the freshwater systems of the interior USA. The strong collaborative spirit of these independent networks are bolstered by this intercompatible infrastructure, and has helped researchers capture and catalog movements across the entire Northwest Atlantic from the Arctic through the Caribbean. These success stories, in turn, I go back to my funders with these, and they continue to make the case for OTN to our funders. To talk about Canada a little more, OTN does support and connect independent networks where we can. We build out a connectivity through our loaner program that I mentioned earlier. but we also support the research community in Canada through backbone listening lines that we maintain ourselves across Canada's oceans. So these are a few key lines positioned across the Scotian Shelf and the Grand Banks. They are co-designed and maintained through partnerships with DFO, which is our equivalent to NOAA. To serve all these stations economically, we can deploy wave gliders with modems that communicate with underwater stations and let us gather data on an annual basis, despite these undersea moorings staying in the water for 7 years at a time. This becomes important when you're servicing lines that have over 250 stations, as is the case with the Halifax line, which is this inset here. A few months at sea for a wave glider, and then a team of pilots on shore who are steering her can recover data from hundreds of listening stations and refresh the knowledge of how animals are using the Northwest Atlantic, all while collecting oceanographic and meteorological data at the same time. Also, nobody gets seasick. While the west coast of North America is not yet as well covered as the Atlantic coast, OTN also maintains key lines in Canada's Pacific, looking to build backbone capacity and generate the same broad-scale collaboration across Canada's west coast. So recently, we've seen great strides toward pan-Pacific coverage between our partner networks, PIRAT in the Pacific Islands, PATH in the California Valley watershed, and OTN's Northeast Pacific node, which covers Western Canada and the Northwestern US. But recently, the addition of a new partner in the region that seeks to unite American researchers across Alaska through the US Pacific means that we might be well on our way to a continent-scale partnership that operates in the same way that we've been doing in the Atlantic and Eastern Arctic. So if I could switch from the geography to the hexagons for a moment, this is the game at a very high level. We share a common set of data pipelines and processes. These networks can reliably quality control, cross-reference, and share the incoming data. We have the exact same format and process on the input and the output phases, and thereby we achieve intercompatibility. This also helps us share our analysis tools. So now researchers in Norway can develop a tool that was first built in the Great Lakes to help understand migrations up and down river for migratory populations that have nothing to do with each other except the fact that they're both somewhat anadromous. So as a link in the chain between the researchers connecting these animal presence and movement data and the global understanding of marine biodiversity, OTN and our partner networks have this ability now to work together across regions and disciplines to securely and accurately move information towards the decision makers and help our researchers create change from local to global scales. We can create context and express the power of electronically tagged animal movement data to the Ocean Biodiversity Information System. We can provide environmental data that we collect incidentally to the appropriate oceanographic data pipelines, and we can represent Canada as a strong international leader of handling this data in which we specialize. So a little bit of a historic snapshot, a little family picture that includes Yuri's very intrepid gang down in Australia. Something that you might know about me is that I'm a computer scientist by trade. I'm not a very good biologist at all. I'm more of a data person and a people person than a fish person. So my own role is through building and expanding not just these data pipelines, but also these partnerships. But to ensure that we're doing things the right way, the OTN data team and I, led by our International Data Management Committee, we're responsible for understanding the evolving global standards and the quality control frameworks that are helping build trust in these collective data systems. So happy to say that recently our data center, the database, the data processing pipelines, and the procedures that we follow were certified by Core Trust Seal. And then late in 2024, we were also accredited as an associated data unit of the International Oceanographic Data Exchange. And with both of these certifications in hand, we were welcomed as a member of the World Data System. We secure these certifications for the shared global system to help people who are looking for data they can rely on see us as a valuable resource in the observation network that we're all part of. I'm not going to talk about specific data pipelines. You can come talk to me later about this. It is part of my job. But I will mention that the first well-established pipeline that OTN has designed for publishing telemetry data to OBIS is found here. We wear another hat. We are the thematic OBIS node for electronically tagged animal movement data. So we're responsible for publishing this data into OBIS, and we participate fully and eagerly in the OBIS community. Part of our role as a thematic node is to design the data publication standard that fits OBIS's format and properly represents our stripe of data within their broader system. So it's not necessarily that I have to publish all of the tracking data that happens, but I help build and inform the standard, and then the national or regional other nodes can publish it to that standard, and then everybody gets along. Thanks to the common format and intercompatibility of the node network, we can create a standardized public archive for any project across any of the regions that wish to publish their data into OBIS or GBIF. So here in Canada, there are set data sets like DFO programs, Passamaquoddy Regional Pelagics, or consultant-led projects like Robichaux Sturgeon, but we publish a lot of freshwater animal movement data as well as marine, and there's a little bit of a heat map here on the OBIS portal. These are the currently published data points for the Atlantic region. A key consideration when this kind of data shows up in an OBIS or a GBIF user's general searches or species records, we're putting these presence records in their proper context. It's a set of very well-tracked individuals. So if I have 50,000 detections of one salmon, we're informing OBIS properly, like, hey, we're following the journey of a single animal through time and space. We're not observing 50,000 salmon. So the last thing I'll say, OTN is an eager participant in the emerging goose network called IMOS for animal-borne ocean sensors. As a national data assembly center for this network, we intend to serve Canadian researchers who are instrumenting animals with oceanographic sensors and helping them connect the real-time data they provide to the global telecommunication system. These animals, like an ocean glider that you don't know how to steer, they're very capable of staying at sea for long periods of time and inhabiting very hard to sample regions of the global ocean. The pioneers for this work are at Australia's Integrated Marine Observing System. They have informed a vision of global community of researchers that are sharing this important data on timescales that allow it to be optimally useful. OTN's intention as part of our strategic plan for the coming 5 years is to support Canada's contribution to that noble goal. So I think that's a good enough amount for me to sort of start us off with. And if there are questions, I'm happy to take them. And I'm really glad for you guys inviting me and hopefully get collaborations going with OTN.
Amazing. Thank you so much, John. That was a great presentation and so helpful. There are so many graphics in there. Lacey and I are already like, oh my gosh, we have to steal this. We have to ask John for this. So super helpful just to see how these pieces work together in the context of OTN.
You're
Lacey,
welcome to any of them. Yeah.
cool. Thank you. Lacey, did you want to jump in with the first question for John?
Yeah, again, John, thank you. You had so many points that we have been thinking about, and so it's sparking already a lot of great thoughts about, especially for the cross-taxa collaboration part of the MoveOn effort. So, but I'd say one practical first question I had was whether OTN is engaging with freshwater bond or aware of freshwater bond.
We don't have direct connections to any bonds as far as I'm aware, but what we do is find folks that are doing acoustic telemetry in freshwater systems. So the systems you didn't see today are GLaToS in the Great Lakes. Raft we sort of alluded to, but they're handling the major US rivers. In Canada, the freshwater stuff just goes into the correct regional network for it. But yes, there's a lot of freshwater practitioners in the data systems that I was showing you, and there's a couple other data systems specific to freshwater, but their connectivity to a freshwater bond is a mystery to me, although
Yeah,
it's yours to chase.
it seems okay. Yeah, I'm just starting to pull these pieces together, and it seems like some kind of low-hanging fruit conversations that could happen there. So, okay, and then, or Talia, do you want to ask the next one, or?
Yeah, I guess this is one that we might come back to in the open conversation too, because I think I'd be interested to hear what you both think. But given that you and Yuri have also interacted and that nice visualization you shared with all the different data sets and where they cover, I guess one of the things we were hoping to hear about is like, what are the biggest opportunities for improving collaboration between these different national systems? So whether that's like partnerships, data integration, technological advancements, like what are the barriers and opportunities you see there?
Opportunities, intercompatibility. There's been one dominant practitioner of the hardware for so long that there's an accidental intercompatibility. There's a new initiative called Open Protocol where a group of manufacturers are agreeing to intentionally make intercompatible gear. And so the ability to extend your observing capacity to all of your neighbors and then to the global community is important. But the threat, Tobler's law of geography says people care most about things that are closest, and that's true here too. So the power of having regions and nations sort of set the tone on data sharing within the network, data sharing to the public is very important, and it's something that we enshrine in this network of networks approach. So as long as we agree we can play with one another, everybody gets to have a strong identity for themselves and set the tone for their own collaborations within the regions. So that has been a very important feature of what we've done so far.
Wonderful. Thank you. John, since we have a little more time, also if others have questions for John, please drop them in the chat too. But your comment just before the event started about like basically the marine community advancing in part due to like high costs of technology. I'm really interested in that. Could you speak a little bit more to like, it seems like we have a lot to learn in the move bond space, trying to bridge these different silos, whether they're taxonomic or geographic. And it seems like we have a lot to learn from the marine community in terms of like figuring out this coordination component. So yeah, why do you think that the marine community has done well, and what are some lessons learned there?
Yeah, so the focus that we've had on building sort of a backbone of infrastructure does not come cheaply. The reason that we originally started with annual moorings, so imagine having to go out every year and lift up 250 anchored moorings and change them over, re-battery them and put them back down. So now you're looking at millions of dollars in ship time and hardware and person time, and some poor soul is at sea for 4 weeks doing all that. That is the kind of thing that is very difficult to scale. So when each person can take on a little bit and then add their part to the whole, we get the kind of connectivity, the kind of coverage that is the envy of the world, without have any one person spend tens of millions of dollars on anchors and moorings and ship time. So finding solutions to reduce costs but still gain the ability to monitor large swaths of the ocean. Collaboration is the big one. That's also why we got into ocean robotics here at OTM, because that's another big way that we can knock costs down.
Makes sense. Thank you. One other area that came through really strongly in the registration questions was how you think about like linking to global policy frameworks from the national scale. And I'm curious how you think about that from the OTN perspective. Are you more focused on like, clearly there's coordination on the global level, but do you just trust like the national goals and targets and frameworks to align and feed in, or are you actively also thinking about how these directly contribute to global frameworks like the CBD and CMS?
Thankfully we don't have the mandate to directly think about those things. So we build partnerships with researchers and with DFO as our national oceanographic institution. Our partnerships there are meant to inform how we deploy ourselves to respond and to support those goals. So our largest partner, we're supporting tracking programs with DFO that catalog everything from white shark to salmon smolt in all 3 Canadian ocean basins and also the Great Lakes. The researchers there set the agenda, but our backbone arrays, which are periodically informed by the needs of this group, they allow us to plan to be more ambitious and build the capacity that they need beyond the federal and provincial government programs. And then once this capacity starts, academia has different questions that they might be looking to answer and they pile on. So we're never really directly deploying gear in response to a specific policy goal, but researchers are. So there are some examples to quantify undersea cables effects on snow crab migration, to evaluate potential interaction between marine life and tidal turbines, to measure on short time scales what is the success of our efforts to rehabilitate Atlantic whitefish habitat here in Nova Scotia, to track the migration of salmon across river impediments and their changing viability across the years and the decades. Those all get supported by our hardware through the loaner programs, through people relying on backbone infrastructure. Through our software, we build consortiums of people who have the same question but are slightly differently positioned to answer it. We build them into a consortium of independent projects that share their data internally and can produce larger conclusions. So we support these efforts by our partners. We don't necessarily set those agendas ourselves.
Wonderful. Thank you.